The Lumix 24-60 f2.8 is a great choice for a YouTube setup because it's got a constant f2.8 aperture and is smaller than a standard 24-70mm f2.8 lens. But whenever this lens came out, I was really excited to see such a versatile and small lens finally available for under $1,000. Unfortunately, this lens has gone up in price quite a bit over the last year. But in this video, I just want to show what you can expect using this lens for a primarily talking head YouTube setup. So right now we're using it with the S1 II, shooting in 6K open gate, and I've got it at 24mm at f2.8. And here in a little bit, we're going to compare this to the 24mm f1.8 lens, as well as the 50mm 1.8, and I'm also going to compare it to the 20-60 and talk about the 24-105 as well, just so you can get an idea of the differences in all of these lenses. But when I first got this lens, I was really impressed with how sharp it was, as well as how compact, and I was a little nervous that I wasn't going to like 60mm on the tight end as much as I would like something like a 70mm, because my other main lens is the 24-105. But I found the more I use this lens, the more I just kind of got used to not having the ability to go quite as tight. Especially for the talking head portions of my videos, I typically use it at about 45mm or so. And it's really handy to have this versus a prime, because if I need the shot a little bit wider or a little bit tighter, depending on the item I'm reviewing, then I love that you can just quickly change the focal length of the lens. A couple other video features using this with the S5 IIX, the S1 II, the S1 IIe, and the S1 R2. I haven't noticed any issues with the autofocus struggling. I've got it on face detect mode right now and it works just fine. I also will move my focus points on the screen whenever I'm shooting B-roll, and this also does a great job at keeping up for that as well. So really, with any of the latest generation of Panasonic cameras, you're going to be able to expect great autofocus with this. I would say don't get this if you have the S5 or the S1H though, if you really want to have great autofocus, because those cameras are still kind of limited due to the camera's autofocus systems. Also, the autofocus motor is quiet and smooth. You're not going to notice it chattering even with a microphone on top of your camera. Let's compare the 24-60 to the 20-60. So the 20-60 is a little bit smaller and the filter size is not quite as big. This one does extend quite a bit though, even whenever you zoom it in all the way. So the 20-60 gets almost as long as the 24-60, but the diameter of it's still small. The main reason you pick the 24-60 over the 20-60 is because the 20-60 has a variable aperture that goes anywhere from f3.5 all the way up to f5.6 when you zoom. So this means as you zoom, your image is actually going to get darker, which is super annoying and frustrating to deal with. And really, there's only an extra 4mm on the wide end. I have really liked the 20-60 lens. It comes in handy in a pinch, but the more I use the 24-60, the less I actually use the 20-60, and I think I'm going to be getting rid of this one soon. The next lens I want to talk about compared to the 24-60 is the 24-105. This is one of my most used lenses, and actually this is still probably my most used B-roll lens. For me, there's really two things I prefer about the 24-105, namely the fact that it has the optical image stabilization as well as macro capability, so you can get 0.5 times macro shots with this. And I believe with the 24-60, it's somewhere in the 0.25x times, so you're not able to get quite as close for your shots with the 24-60 as you are with the 24-105. Also with the 24-105, even though this one is an f4 aperture, it's still constant, so your brightness isn't going to change as you zoom. And at 105mm, you're able to get really great image compression with this lens. It's super sharp at f4, and the image stabilization is really handy for getting slow motion B-roll shots handheld with the S1 II. So personally, I don't use the 24-105 very much for talking head video, but I do use this a lot still for B-roll shots. And there's times when I use the 24-60 and I have to swap it out for the 24-105, namely just for the macro close-up capabilities that this lens has. On the stabilization side, I do think the image stabilization is nice to have built into the lens, but the camera's in-body image stabilization is still great, and that's not really the feature I miss as much as just being able to get really close to my subject. Last, let's talk about the 24-60 next to the 24mm. The 24mm f1.8 S prime lens is still pretty pricey when you compare it to the 24-60. The 24mm S prime lens is still a pretty pricey option. The only button you have on the side is the autofocus manual focus switch, and you also got the focus ring on it. This one goes down to f1.8, which is great if you want to get the background really blurry, and you definitely do benefit from a little bit of extra background blur out of the 24mm f1.8 compared to the 24-60. It'll also give you a little bit better low light performance because it's a few stops brighter than the f2.8, but all the new Lumix cameras are great even if you jack the ISO up on them. So I didn't really find the f1.8 aperture to be necessary for low light when I was shooting in a studio environment, but it is handy whenever you're just out running and gunning in the real world to let more light in. So right now we got the 24-60 at 24mm at f2.8, and we're gonna go zoom in and see what we can get at 35mm, 50mm, 60 millimeters. Now we got the lens at 35 millimeters, just so you can see the difference between running it at 24 and 35. Take note of what the compression of the lens looks like, as well as what the background looks like. Here's the 24 millimeter f1.8. We're running this at f1.8, and I did have to lower the aperture a little bit. I feel like the background still looks pretty similar to the f2.8 lens though, unless we get really close to the lens, and then you start to notice more subject isolation. And for this test, we got the 24 millimeter f1.8 on now at f1.8 aperture, and I'm about a foot away from the lens, just so you can see the difference from running the 24 millimeter prime at f1.8 to running the 24 to 60 millimeter at 24 millimeters f2.8. And now we got the 24 to 60 again, running it at 24 millimeters, so the widest, and at f2.8, so you can see what this lens looks like for talking head video. And now we've got the 24 to 60 at f4, just so you can see the difference between f2.8 and f4 on this lens. Still makes the subject look pretty good and crisp, but just with a little bit less background blur. Here's the lens at 50 millimeters, getting more of a tight shot, and you notice with this, it really starts to make you separate from the background even more. And here we got the 7 Artisans 50 millimeter f1.8 lens, currently set to the f1.8 aperture. So you can compare this to see the little bit of extra background blur that you get out of a 50 millimeter lens at f1.8 versus the 24 to 60 at f2.8. So overall, I really like the 24 to 60 f2.8. I bought 2 of these because it's such a versatile and useful lens for talking head videos. The only thing I don't like about it is I wish it could get a little bit closer for macro capabilities, but I've still got the 24 to 105 f4 whenever I need to get really close-up shots. If you're interested in buying this lens, I will have links to buy it in the description below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Lumix and video gear content.